Metroid podcast. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined by Dakota Lasky. Dak, what's up? How you doing, bud?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic, my guy. Yeah, I don't really have any good news or anything cool happening in my life, except that I played a really sick demo this weekend. So I'm really excited to talk about that. But otherwise, yeah, I'm doing good. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great as well. I played the same demo that you did. For anyone that is in the Metroid world and living under a rock, there was a little demo called Prime 2D that just released, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It is a reimagining of the world of Metroid Prime in the classic 2D gameplay that we all know and love. Dak and I loved this so much that we seeked down a couple members of the development team, and they're here today with us. So it is my pleasure to introduce, you know him as Troid92 and Metroid Zapper. We know him as Matt and Guy. Fellas, how you doing?
Doing pretty well.
Yeah, man, pretty good.
Well, thanks for stopping by with us today, and it's always nice to have an even Canadian to American ratio on the show here. So appreciate you guys making the time.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So let's just let's get right to it here. So you guys released this demo for this project called Prime 2D, and it's kind of that sweet like reimagining that a lot of us classic Metroid fans way back when Metroid Prime was first released were just like, oh man, this would have been so great in 2D. You guys actually went ahead and did that and created that. And for anybody that has not played this demo, you got to stop what you're doing. You got to go track it down. There's forums where we can track it down. Everybody listening could probably, I think it's on the front page of Metroid Database right now. You owe it to yourself to go play this. It's going to sound like we're shilling, but man, this was like such a cool demo and a cool concept. Guys, I guess let's just start at the very beginning. Where did this project start and how did it originate? Because I think it's been in the works for a long time, hasn't it?
Yeah, so it has a rich history, sort of going back all the way to 2004, and the most recent demo that we just put out is we actually started that around 2017, but because of this like rich history behind it, there's sort of a lot of cool things that have happened in the past. We've had many programmers before, and yeah, so it's sort of it's a more complicated question than it sounds. Like a lot of the ideas and inspiration for this came in 2015. Sorry, but yeah, for the most part, this was about 3.5 years ago. It was August 2017. Tim, also known as the Illustrative Man, wanted to start actually putting this into motion, and so he created a title screen mock-up for us. He sent it to me. He got a few other artists who were interested, and he was like, we're going to make a video in November. And at first I was like, I might not have time for this, we'll see. But then a month later I was like, okay, I think I've made time for this. What's happening with this? And also, can Metroid Zapper join? I really wanted him to be involved for his talent, and we get along well and stuff. And so the dust of that kind of settled, and we sort of figured things out, and eventually it was this core essence team that is described in the game credits and also in the lore of the game. Yeah, so we put together that video, And since I was the programmer, we used the game engine that I had been working on for quite a long time. It's just the thing that I know best. And then from there, we were just like, yeah, let's keep going and make more of the game after this. And so that's what we did.
Awesome, awesome. So guys, I mean, I'm looking at your guys' credits here, your resume on here. So I mean, Troid, you're programmer, lead sound designer, art director. Zapper, you're director, art director, artist, animate. Like, who? I mean, it sounds like there's nothing that you guys can't do. So maybe just like really quickly, because I know that there are some team members that couldn't be with us here tonight. Really quickly, maybe just go over what kind of you guys do and what the other team members involved in the project are and what they are bringing to the table.
All right. Well, um, it's true that we did do a little bit of everything. I wanted to make sure when we made the credits that we properly credited everyone for the work they did. I mainly focused on the sprite animations, so I would create the frames for the animations or the pieces, and Matt in turn would put it in game and make it look 1,000% cooler, which is why I was adamant that he also get an animation credit because he, in my opinion, worked just as hard on the animation. Um, like for example, the Samus 360 aiming that everybody loves so much is like a huge testament to our teamwork and collaboration because I had to draw a lot of independent pieces and frames, but he also had to create custom software to make sure that the in-between frames that were being rotated in engine actually looked good because the industry standard rotation usually looks quite clunky and people don't like it. Andreas, who is like a god amongst pixel art, he's a professional artist, so we're very lucky to have him just doing all this work for free. He is the main environmental artist. I helped a bit. I patched up some holes here and there, but largely all the environments are due to him. Like I'm willing to say like 95%, if not more. Um, and like Matt said, we also had the illustrative man on our team, which is Tim. Um, at the beginning of the project, he was behind the overall vision at the time and like the level design and like the planning. But eventually, Tim was seeking a career in real life and going to school, and he was busy, so he had to drop the project, which is understandable. And at that point, me and Matt picked up those roles, which is why it seems like we can do everything. It's just because as a small team, we had to, we had to step up to the plate because the levels weren't going to design themselves. And, we've had a couple contributors here and there. They're all listed in the credits, but the only other active team member that worked on the game is, I think he goes by either, was it Hassan, right, Matt?
That sounds right. He's H.S on our Discord server.
Yeah. Yeah, we used to know him as Hack Me, but he's HS now, a man of many names. But he helped out with the level art as well, pretty much filling in where we needed extra mid-ground or backgrounds or helping fill any holes. Because sometimes we would, smash some things together and it'd be very obvious seams, and no idea how picky I was about those.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you mentioned something earlier too that I think a lot of people know, but probably just needs to be reiterated as well. Like this is a passion project, right? Like something that you guys are doing kind of on your own time.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that's really cool. And I want to just give a huge congratulations to both of you guys for sure. The rest of the team members that were involved in this because. I played this last night. Dak played it, I think, last night, and like we were just legitimately like super, super impressed. And we'll get into some of the specific things that we wanted to bring up with you guys and chat about. But like this is it. I don't know what it is about Metroid games. Like it seems like Nintendo fans make better 2D Metroid games than Nintendo does sometimes. But you guys knocked it out of the park.
Thanks, man. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I gotta jump in real quick, Matt. You mentioned that you built, or at least one of you mentioned that, Matt, you built a custom software for the like the 360 aiming and like the frames. Like, can you go more into that? Because that sounds like really fascinating, and I have no idea how that works. So could you like kind of go into that a little more?
Sure. So, yeah, there are a few aspects of the engine that I'm very proud of. I've been working at this. So I started the engine in 2006. So it's been around 15 years now. Of course, when I first started, I was much younger, just learning how to do something like this. So it took many years to get it off the ground, and most of the work I would say happened in the last 3.5 years. We got quite a lot of features.
Right.
But so this one in particular, I yeah, we needed pixel art rotations to look really good. Um, and that's not something that's normally very possible in games, especially in real time. There are some good tools for rotating them, like in an art development program, but for having it work, like the entire, um, not to spoil anything, there's a room in the game that rotates, that uses this, um, and to have that level of like rotation in one scene working in real time without the game stuttering and things like that. I really wanted to make that possible, and at this point, that's actually something I am planning to sort of spin off into its own proprietary sort of business venture, like a thing I will sell. So I can't quite get into like the details of it, but yeah, it's called Spintroid, that particular thing.
And just to give some context here to anyone that has not played this demo yet, which I really hope that after you guys are done listening to this, you go ahead and check this out. But imagine the 360 aiming in Samus Returns, except you're moving while you do this. It's really smooth. It's really fluid. Really really kind of like advanced, but a logical step into how like I feel like 2D Metroid should be,
That's
and
how it should
it's
be in a Metroid game, in an actual
yeah
like
like
like official Metroid game. That's how it should be. If I play another 2D Metroid game and this isn't how it controls, I'd be like, I'm just gonna go back and play this. Like that ass. Like it was that good. It was really smooth. And coming from someone who loves to play mouse and keyboard games already. Like I talk a lot about playing like the Prime games on Dolphin or whatever, and I play a lot of PC games. Like this felt so fluid. It was, I mean, really well done, and being able to just run and shoot, run and gun, and be in full control of my actions, which is one of the, like I think the most important things in a game like this, uh, perfectly nailed. So hats off to you for that. I don't really wear hats, but if I had any hats, I would be taking them off for you. It was really well executed. So it's awesome that there's like a proprietary like system behind that that's like working that system. That's really cool.
yeah, and it's really fluid. I'm probably gonna say this a lot, but I mean, listeners, you guys got to check this out. Guys, I want to talk about the actual demo itself here because a couple weeks ago on the show, we were talking with someone and we were kind of saying like, it would make sense if Prime Trilogy one day ever comes to Nintendo Switch if they released a demo and it was the opening part of like the Frigate Orpheon. And I kind of loved actually because I think that would have been a natural assumption, like if you're going to do a demo for Prime 2D, that it's going to take place on the Frigate because it's such a self-contained thing. But I really loved like actually getting to see the world in 2D, like where you spend your time. You know what I mean? Is that kind of why that decision was made to like have the demo take place in the Talon overworld in the Chozo Ruins and kind of bypass the opening sequence of Metroid Prime?
Yeah, so in 2017, in that fall, when we were sort of piecing everything together, um, Tim was the one who said, uh, who had this idea, and so he might have a better explanation of it. But yeah, the idea was just the frigate Orpheon in Metroid Prime is sort of a tutorial area, showcasing what their engine can do, showcasing how the controls work, and because we were still early in our designs for this, making an area like that can demonstrate all of these things and show what we have. we just felt that wasn't quite, you know, it wasn't quite ready for us to be able to do that. We had to, you know, establish controls first before we can teach them all that kind of stuff. Um, so he decided a good first demo would just be up till Hive Mecha and then stop it there. And he gave us some deadlines for it. Of course, in the years since, we missed all of those deadlines until this one, but no one needs to know that. um, and yeah, Guillaume has more to say.
Yeah, it's definitely multi-layered because, like Matt was saying, the frigate is really great and self-contained, but at the same time, it's actually very comprehensive in terms of its gameplay aspects. For example, we would need to have made grapple beam and have Ridley in and the Parasite
Right.
Queen, and there's really a lot that's condensed in that little frigate, and it just made more sense to start on Talon 4, where things are calm and you work your way up to a boss. And we just went room by room, and I think it turned out quite nice. But don't worry, if we are allowed to continue, we'd love to do the frigate.
Yeah, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. I didn't even think of that actually. I just thought like I had thought like maybe the thought was like, you know, we've seen 2D spaceships, but like we've never seen 2D Talon 4. But that's, you know, the logical explanation is usually the best one, right? Um, so I guess this is a question for you, Guy, because one of the things that I immediately noticed when I was playing this demo is like how crisp and just really good the sprite work looks, particularly with Samus's gunship, and it has that like I'm gonna butcher the naming of this, but it has that effect where like it's 2D, but like the gunship looks like it pops out a little bit more. Like it almost like looks like it sticks out a little bit more. And I remember back in like 2004, Legend of Zelda Four Swords Adventures had this same kind of thing where like you were playing and like it popped out. The sprite work popped out a little bit more. Do you guys? Is there a name for what I'm trying to describe?
If there is, I'm not aware of it, but essentially you're describing the fact that a two-dimensional object looks three-dimensional, right?
I mean, yeah, it looks. It just looks so awesome. I thought like the gunship just really popped for me.
Yeah, that was a collaborative effort. Andreas made the gunship, the shape, and the design of it. And then I went over it and added detail. So I'm glad that we were able to nail a really nice gunship. Actually, I think that's our third gunship, right, Matt?
Is it the third?
I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah, you're right. It is. We had multiple sizes on this one. That's right.
Yeah,
The intermediate. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that one just I don't know what it just looked so good like in the center of like the Talon overworld, because even in 3D space that's kind of like the centerpiece of that room. And man, it just it stuck out, and I just thought really kind of set the tone for the rest of the game. And like there are some other sprites that you see that also look like they're like popping, like they look 3D, they look like they're just a few pixels ahead of all the other it looks really well done, I thought. So again, hats off to you guys.
thanks.
So one thing that I also kind of noticed when you first started playing and you go into the other areas, you have like, for example, the intro to Choza Ruins, and there's a ton of sand, like no visibility, right? And even like on Talon Overworld, there's a lot more rain than in like the original Metroid Prime. What was like the decision making behind like adding kind of like a little more like artistic license to that, changing it up a little bit, and then like the weather effects for Choza Ruins? Is that something that we're gonna see in other parts of the game? Because for me, I love weather effects. I love stuff like that where like the visibility goes down, you got to work against the weather. So when I walked into Chozo Ruins, that was a really pleasant surprise. What was the decision making behind that, and maybe the design behind it, and are we going to see more of that?
So, I guess since I had the idea for the sandstorm, I think, and I was the one who made it. Um, I part of our design process is it's a little bit of that like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if kind of effect.
Right.
We've been playing these games for a long time, and so we have all of these connections in our head about what things we could do with this and that sort of thing. And then in addition to that, we also very heavily prioritize things. We have a lot of lists. We put things in order and weigh which thing should I make next, which one is actually more important. Um, that sandstorm, I really wanted to see that in the game because I thought it was a cool idea. Um, this was the night before one of our deadlines when we thought we might actually be making a public release, and it was very clear that we wouldn't be. I said, you know what, I want this sandstorm in the game, and made it. And that's the origin story behind that. Uh, but in terms of like the more abstract question of like what types of things we want to put in and what type of creative freedoms we have, I think I'll let Guillaume answer that.
Yeah, so a lot of the creative freedoms um, stem from trying to take the best elements of 2D Metroid design and the best elements of 3D Metroid design and trying to marry them in a cohesive unison. And obviously, not all things can be translated accordingly, right? Like in 3D,
Mm-hmm.
you've got an entire other dimension. So we had to be creative with some of the room layouts. And those kind of things that are, when you're trying to remake or demake a game that already exists, you're going to have um, that desire to replicate it as accurately as possible. And I think that's important, but you need to be able to change when you have no choice. So, being exposed to that kind of environment, I think, bred uh, a different type of thinking. Where, like Matt was saying, wouldn't it be cool if? And I'm sure we'll get into some spoilers about the demo later on, where that was very applicable. And sometimes I literally am like, oh, Matt, wouldn't it be cool if? And then we're like, yeah, that's amazing. And I'm like, we're doing it. And he's like, we're doing it. And then we do it. So a lot of it
Yeah.
is just trying to think, okay, um, 2D Metroid fans would love this, 3D Metroid fans would love this, and we just try to bring as much of the love and passion for Metroid that we have. Um, and really hope that that came through. And yes, we do hope on having other cool environmental effects.
Yeah, you're reading my mind, man, and we're definitely going to get to some spoilers later in this chat about some of the decisions that were made to, like you said, kind of get the best of both worlds. Before we get there, what was the control like process like? Just figuring out like what the controls were going to be for this game. Like obviously we know that the big kind of the big selling point or the big feature here is the 360 aiming, which it really works well. Like how I guess like how like long did that take to really kind of nail down, or like was that one of the first things you worked on and kind of built the game around that afterwards? And because and actually I guess I'll ask my second part after we get that first part down. But like, yeah, how did getting the controls down come to be?
Well, for the longest time, we were just constructing the environment and getting in lighting effects, coloring effects, and just having rooms that you could navigate between. And so for the longest time, the player was just the ball, and moving around. You would just fly. You would just fly, and like when you would hit stuff, it would use accurate physics. So if you graze a surface, it would spin you and that kind of thing, or you could like bounce. But really, you were just a ball flying around. Um, that's how it was for the longest time. Then for like another long period of time, it was more refined animations coming in. As Guillaume would make more of these animations and refine them and get transitions. Now we have like turning when you're crouching, like that kind of thing. Those would sort of piece in one step at a time. And I was still putting off the like we were still putting off the 360 aiming. So for another long period of time, it was a pretty functional Samus. Except every time you'd want to shoot anything, those bullets would just come out of like the center of the sprite. Like she would just be shooting them from her chest, and then finally, like the one of the last things we did to really make the control experience feel good was adding the visuals, adding the 360 aim. So it was sort of like a gradual step moving into this, and that includes refining all of the camera movements when you move the mouse around, all of that kind of thing. It came gradually. I know at various points, I was studying some of the games that this is inspired by, in terms of, when you jump, how does the momentum carry? When you land, how does that work? And all sorts of things like that. And just, we really wanted to expand on that, add more fluid animations. This is one of the only games I know of where, as you're about to land, not when you're spin jumping, we were hoping to get that in, but it wasn't ready in time. But when you're just normal jumping, as you're about to land, she anticipates the landing, and her feet will get
Right.
ready for that position. And I don't see games that normally do that. We studied a lot of jumping in a lot of games, and if that exists, we would be happy to know about it if anyone knows. But yeah, so it was just a very gradual process. Everyone on the team was weighing in input the whole time.
Nice. So I got to ask because I have two left hands when it comes to mouse and keyboard. Any future plans to get controller support for the finished product?
Yes.
Oh, Andy's a happy man.
I'm a happy
Yeah,
man.
we're playing.
That's the best answer that we could have had.
We want this game to be accessible to as many players as possible. Controller support and like customizable inputs, those are a really great way to make that happen. They just were not ready in time for this first demo.
Right.
Well, you'll get it soon, Andy. Though.
Yeah. So the second part of my original question that I thought it just kind of struck me over and over again as I was playing this game. You mentioned like the lighting effects of like the scan visor, like when you're scanning something, you see the light coming off, and it looks like really slick. It just looks really good. I mean, scanning in general, like when it's so. Again, it feels really natural to me. So I guess my question, or maybe not even a question, but just a statement is like, I think that you guys did like a really, really good job of like taking these Prime-esque elements like scanning and like, just the more cinematic stuff, like, whenever you'd be able to see Samus's reflection in her visor, or the lighting effects, that kind of stuff, and like implementing them into a 2D space that, we haven't really seen a lot. So like it hit me when I was playing it just like constantly that like, man, this feels like really natural. It feels like, if this like legitimately showed up in the next 2D Metroid, I wouldn't be surprised at all, because just it fit like a glove. It felt really good. So I guess I wanted to again tip my hat and then just say like, my question I guess was making sure that scanning, which is such an important part of Metroid Prime, was making sure that scanning was a part of Prime 2D, like a high priority for you guys.
Yeah, it was important. We had some idea of what to go off of, right? We've seen the X-ray scope in Super Metroid implemented. It wasn't exactly ideal to be using that all the time. It was a little bit clunky.
Right.
But, we had a good starting point from where we could go to refine it, not to mention how Prime utilized it. The scanning is not really limited by the 2D world, I should say, because it was in 3D originally, but all you need to do is look at something and hold a button. So it was really about trying to use it in a way that was interesting and not make it feel forced. It might come off gimmicky. I know some people didn't like the scanning in Prime, but I feel like the right way to use it is occasionally for some puzzle solving, and mostly for those who care about the lore and reading about the details. And I think you had something to add, right, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, it's I remember reading in like 2004 and 2005 when this was first starting up as a concept on the internet of like what would happen if we made Metroid Prime in 2D. Um, Scan Visor was definitely one of those things that people talked about, like how could this be possible? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and we went through a lot of ideas. Some games scans will just happen automatically when you're near something. It will just say, more information in your logbook or something like that. And that's one possible solution. Another is like if you turn on the scan visor and you're just within proximity to things, it will automatically scan. And so we went through a lot of idea processes and like tested these things out, um, and also like there's a difference like even in like the Metroid Prime games, for example. While you have the visor open, what does that look like? Is it little orange squares, or is it the entire object that highlights in a color? Um, all of these things got discussed, and we ended up going with this one, which felt pretty natural to us. Um, and one of the few changes that we made sure we made was if you skip a scan, like for example, if a scan is no longer possible to get, you will just get that in your logbook. We all sort of agreed that feeling of, you fight a really cool boss and you barely survive and you're like, wow, that was awesome. And then you realize you forgot to scan it. That
Yes.
is the worst feeling ever.
Spider
um,
Guardian.
so we decided that that just shouldn't be a thing. That's not to say we won't make very obscure enemies that will be difficult to find, and it will still be a challenge if you so desire to fill out 100% of the logbook. But you will never be locked out of something. I think that was very important.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
No, that and you bring up enemies in scanning, but I actually want to ask about them in general because I really loved your interpretations of like the war wasps and like the plasmites. Can you talk a little bit about like how it was developing enemies that normally are in a 3D space and kind of operate in that area, and now you have to translate them to a 2D space. And they might not have the same utility, and they might not be able to fight the same, right? Like a war wasp in Prime, they're spinning around you, and you had to kind of take some different routes to make that kind of enemy work. So can you talk a little bit about just going into translating those characters from 3D to 2D? Because I personally loved fighting all the enemies in this game, even down to like just zoomers. It was fun. I found like myself jumping on sap sacks with the power grip and baiting zoomers onto them and they'd explode, right? Like that was awesome. Like stuff like that, emergent stuff like that was really cool. So like, what was the development behind that? I'd love to know.
Well, um, a lot of the enemies, I tried my best to recreate all of the animations needed for what they could originally do in Prime. So, for example, the beetle, we hadn't exactly decided how we wanted it to behave. At the time, when Tim was part of the team, he had suggested that it act like another creature. I think it was called a Muto. Um, I'm pretty sure they're in most Metroid games, but I recall them being in Fusion because at one point the X like possess it and then it gets a like a metallic face shield and you have to like jump over it and shoot it in the butt. It looks like a little rhino type
Right,
beetle,
right.
and um, I just felt that the Muto were just too passive compared to the beetles, and so I went ahead and made the charging and biting animation and said, let's see how we can implement it. And a lot of it was just trial and error to see what would feel right because, like you said, it was a challenge without that extra dimension because we couldn't just do a one for one implementation of the enemies. And I think that out of all the animations I made, I don't think any were wasted. So I think we found a way to implement everything. And some were easier than others, right? Um, like the beetles were a pretty easy solve. The wasps we had to talk about to discuss, particularly during the boss fight. We just decided, okay, they're gonna spin around and just go through the geometry because it'll work, and sometimes it's more important to have gameplay functions than to have 100% realism.
Mm-hmm.
And on my end, that's pretty much what it was. I just decided to make everything as how it was, and if I thought of something new, we'd do that, and then I would hand it to Matt, and then he would go in the game and see what he came up with, and we went from there. And I'm sure he could speak more to it as well.
Yeah, that covers a lot of it. I mean, I would take these animations and like the so we were talking about the beetle. I think the last time I counted, I might have this wrong. It was in the 60s. I think it was 63 frames of beetle animations,
Holy.
which I'm just always so impressed by this art team. But yeah, so I would take these animations and sort of put them in and just see what would happen. I know for a long time we just discussed how are they going to come out of the ground was another aspect. And so just like each little like state of like what it could be doing at any given time, just very experimental. I would implement like an animation of them popping up and down, and then see what does that feel like, what does it look like. The end result. I think I added like a random weight amount before they show up, and various there's a lot of randomness involved in the beetle states. I know, but yeah, the enemies were just basically what Guillaume said. Plop things in, see how it feels, think of new ideas, trial and error it. Get timings down. Sometimes the timings of like the beetle attack animation, for example, when as it's flying through the air, how fast does it go, and then when does it start clamping its jaw down, and like just really making sure that all starts on just the right frame. We had a slow mo feature in development, so we could pull it all the way down to 1 frame per second, and that really helped to study all of these things and make sure it all worked well.
Nice. Yeah, I was just like, man, I can't wait to see like Flagra and Shegoth and stuff like that. I was just like, man, this is I was excited. So I have another question about something else I was excited about, and I feel like this might be something that you guys might not want to reveal yet. So if it is, just say so. We'll move on. But when I was playing and I got the power grip, I was like, well, hello, I remember you from Metroid Zero Mission. And so, of course, in my mind, I got to thinking, like, well, that's a 2D power up in this, 2D version of Metroid Prime. I wonder what other 2D power ups might make their way here. And of course, what I'm getting at here is the one item that I think that, Prime hasn't really nailed down all that well. And of course, I'm talking about the speed booster in Shine Spark. Any plans to have something like that come back in the future in the finished product, or are we being tight-lipped about that right now?
I don't know, Matt. What do you think?
Uh, I think to anything like that, we should say further testing is needed to be determined.
Okay, you know what? That's about as good an answer as I thought that we were gonna get here. So listen, I have another kind of weird question here for you too. So I was playing. I ended up finding 2 missile expansions, an energy tank. I was missing about half the map from Talon Overworld, but one of the other classic staples of 2D Metroid games is like getting like a cool ending screen for like getting 100% items or like finishing the game in a certain amount of time. Whereas Metroid Prime more so leaned towards like strictly item completion for bonus kind of endings or whatever. Have you guys thought that far yet about what you may not do for something similar? Are you just gonna kind of keep it as it was in Metroid Prime, or maybe something a little bit more traditional with like a cool picture of Samus and like the Zero suit or something?
I know we've talked about it, but we haven't settled on anything concrete yet. Because, that's the end of the game, and we just shipped the beginning of the game, so...
Fair enough.
Yeah, I'll add that for this demo, we did do it Metroid Prime style, where it's based on item completion. So if you get 100% of the collectibles that are sort of out in the open, she will take her helmet off, and then if you get all of the, like, 100% of everything, including the artifacts, then there will be a zero suit bonus. But that was sort of a final day or two polish detail, and does not necessarily reflect the final game.
Right. Fair enough. All right. Well, let's. We were talking about the ending of the game. Whenever that happens, let's talk about the
Yes.
ending of the demo. Dak, I
Please.
know. I know you were hyped about
Oh
this,
my
and
god.
I was hyped too. So, and let's just throw a spoiler warning out there for everybody listening. This is the final boss. We're going to talk about the Mecha Hive. It's not what you think. So if you haven't beat it and you want to be pleasantly surprised, stop listening now. Come listen to the rest of it after you're done. So that out there. That being said, this fight rocked. I was, oh man. So first of all, I want to talk about the first phase because I was like, this is a really impressive translation from
Yeah.
how this fight operated in 2D, or in 3D rather, into 2D. But then, and Dak, I'll let you take it after this. The second phase of this, man, just kicked it up into a whole other gear.
Well, I don't even want to go that far. The first phase itself, I was already blown away. After the end of the first phase, I was like, wow, that was an amazing boss fight. I'm a big Galaga fan. I played a ton of it on like the Namco Museum, my GameCube back as a kid, and like arcade machines. And it was like a Galaga boss fight, like with all like the wops going through like the platform and swarming around you. I'm perfect. I was blown away by the first phase of the boss fight. So, and I also love like the Hive Mecha fight in Prime as it is. The first phase of this fight is way better, but it's so good. It looked awesome. So I was like, wow, that was so good. Like I enjoyed it a lot. And then the second phase, guys, you nailed it, man. I was tearing up. Metroid passionate Metroid fans, like 2D Metroid games. Fusion's my favorite, and Metroid Prime's my favorite 3D Metroid. And when I saw the security robot show up, I was like, no freaking way, dude. And that fight went nuts. You guys killed it. It was like, I honestly will say right now that's the best 2D Metroid fight of all time. Facts, like 100%. It was crazy. And I'm a huge Ridley fan, so like the Proteus Ridley boss fight from Samus Returns is like probably like I thought the original like best 2D Metroid fight. Bar none, this was the best. Like dead ass after that fight, I like stood up and like clapped. I wish I was streaming on Twitch because it was that good. It was so good. You guys nailed it. Like the intensity of the fight, like the gameplay was awesome, and like the evolution of that fight from Fusion to like the area, like when everything started breaking down, I was like, whoa, like I cannot talk enough about that boss fight. You guys seriously killed it, and it's some of the best like 2D video game gameplay that I've played in such a long time, and made me like really like hyped to be a Metroid fan. You guys, that was a Metroid fan game experience right there. So that I've been waiting to say that. Like I've been holding that in for like 45 minutes. And I would love to just hear all about this fight, like what went into the development of it, what you guys were on when you were thinking about it. Because like, wow, this was perfect. It's a genius boss fight, an absolutely genius boss fight. Crazy. I loved it.
Hats off, fellas. Hats
Seriously.
off.
Thanks, man. I'm really glad that you liked it so much. Um, did you want to start off on it, Matt, and then I can add on?
Sure. So yeah, so we knew we were designing the demo until this boss, and it is most definitely one of the harder bosses. I mean, a lot of them are difficult, but this one is definitely one of the hardest to translate from 3D to 2D. Like in the original game, the wasps circle around you, and we just can't, we can't do it at least along the same axis that they do in the original game, without it looking very silly. That and things that sometimes seem pretty cool in 3D just are not very cool in 2D. If we just had them circling around the player the entire time and then stopping sometimes, and that was it, that wouldn't be so good. So we had some pretty interesting designs early on. We had one that was pretty cool, where it was the entire wall of the left side was the boss. And Tim came up with that one, and we didn't end up going with it, but it's one of those what ifs. But Yeah, so it went through a few design phases. It took me. I mean, we all work on this in our spare time. Like my career actually isn't even in programming. So it took me a good month to set up just the room, just to be like, okay, here's where a boss could go. Here's we didn't have graphics for it yet because it was still being designed, so it was a wireframe. Like here's where a platform could be. Here's the mechanics of how it might rotate for the later part of it. And just getting all of that set up, it took me like a month before we had a prototype for just the first phase. And then
Wow.
you would get to the second phase, and it would just display an error message across the screen. Um, and so that was like a first pass at it, and then I sent that to the team, and we all tested it and got feedback. Um, Guillaume was really the one who came up with the final designs here. There's a really cool. We might have to pull it up sometime for the community. No promises, but there was a really cool animated GIF he made of how it might work for a phase two, where it just turns into a spider and crawls onto the ceiling from where it was, and all of us on the team were just like, "Yes, that is so cool." um, and it just kind of evolved from there. So I'll pass that over to him because he was the idea guy on this.
Yeah. Oh man. So to hit on what Matt said earlier about the earlier design that Tim made, where he uh, proposed that we make the boss like just the wall instead, and maybe it opens up. He was doing that in an effort to save me the trouble of animating the three-dimensional rotation of Hive Mecha, and I said no. And I made the 3D rotation of Hive Mecha, and
Which is hand
everybody
animated
loves it.
2D. It is not actually
Yeah,
3D.
Oh
yeah.
wow.
Lots of people are like, "Whoa, is that a 3D model? Is it low poly?" I'm like, "No, man. I animated it," and I had the same feeling you guys had because I know it seems ridiculous, but I never played the full animation as I was making it. I would only cycle from frame to frame as I was making it. So when I finally finished the last frame, I hit play, and I was whoa! I was like, "Guys, I think I did good." And
Yeah, yeah, man. I'd say.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
thanks. Tim agreed, and so we went with the classic design, but we still had the problem of okay, the original Hive Mech is a little bit lackluster. How do we make it better? And that's where we started talking about the wasp clipping through the ground and stuff. And Tim was like, "Well, how do we incorporate missiles into the fight?" He's like, "It gives missiles. It'd be cool if it incorporated missiles." And I absolutely love Box. I'm obsessed with Box,
Yeah,
and
Box fans. I
the
love Box.
the reason is because I don't know why Box is so tenacious, why it has the audacity to just randomly show up and just start wrecking everything and do it multiple times. It's just it doesn't give up. And I was like, I love this tiny spider bot. Like it's irrelevant in the grand scheme of Metroid. It's just a Galactic Federation robot, but I love it so much. And I was like, what if this thing turned into Box, except we called it Hive, and instead of shooting fire bombs, it shot out chunks of Hive, and then wasps came out of it, and it would still shoot the missiles because the missiles are the element here. That gave me this idea. So, like Matt was saying, I made a really like terrible like polygon GIF of like all the boss phases and animated it. Everyone was amazed and they were like, "We're doing this." And then I once again shot myself in the foot because I had to make the transformation animation and every single animation for Hive, which I had to study Box immensely for, because it turns out that everybody on the internet who ever ripped Box from the game did it in parts, and nobody has a sheet of the animations. I had to rip footage from somebody streaming the game and like study it, and it was so hard because it was so low quality.
Oh
You're
man.
probably like the world's like leading Box expert now.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and I'll tell you a secret. There are some frames in Box's animation where the legs don't touch the body. There's just straight up empty space.
Wow.
And I recreated
There you
those
go.
too, and no one noticed.
Wow. The attention to
I certainly
detail.
didn't
I'm
notice.
definitely gonna go back and look for that now. That's awesome. I love
So
that.
this fight, like we can't put over this fight enough, actually. But this was a really important part of this demo for me because, like, I was already really impressed with what I've been playing, right? But like this, this kind of did everything to me, and I'll explain what I mean. Like, first of all, with the first phase of the Hive Mecha fight, um, that's when I was, and we had seen this before, but then I was just like, man, okay, so they're really, like, they get it, right? Like they're taking the essence of that fight, which is Samus is surrounded, and like these wasps are coming in around her everywhere, but they're not doing it literally, kind of like you said, where like we're just flying in circles around Sam. Like it was such a fun pattern. It was way more, to me, it just like got the spirit of the fight without replicating it exactly one for one, but it got the spirit and it made it work in a way that worked better for 2D. And then in the second part, I was just like, okay, well, like we've got box in here, like this is awesome, because one of my favorite parts of playing AM2R was like some of the classic enemies from like Fusion and stuff showing up in that game as well. And I was just like, all right, again, like these guys get it. Like there's, it's nice to see like the 2D Metroid with, some 2D Metroid stuff that's thrown in there. And like we're not going to be religious in the way that we adhere to Metroid Prime. So that was really awesome. And then the third part is like, if you ever need just like a demo reel, like your Oscar reel for how the 360
Yeah.
aiming works, like, man, this is it. Like,
That would
and
be
I'm
so
not I'm
sick.
not a computer gamer. Like, like I said, like I have two left hands when it comes to playing mouse and keyboard, but like, man, this was solid. Like, just it was easy to aim, easy to shoot, but challenge it. Like it was really really impressive, guys. I thought that it was really really great.
Thanks. We really appreciate it. We were really hoping that everyone would love that surprise. I was adamant that people would lose it.
I was trying to get the
I-
missile after the first phase like a sucker, and I was like, why can't I get this? Like, what's
I
happening here?
legitimately popped off when he turned into box. Well, when it turned to box, I legit popped off. I was like, no way. And the fight started happening. I was legit blown away. I really didn't like. That's like the kind of stuff that I was not even expecting. And even going back
Yeah.
to the first phase was really awesome. Was there? I guess in that fight, was there any particular part of the fight that maybe was the most difficult, like implementing, other than, I guess I'm assuming probably just like the animation of Hive itself, but was like any like other obstacles or otherwise, like did it really come to like your vision? Like did it like, is it like, are you satisfied with how it came out?
Um, do you want to take that game, or Guillaume, or should I?
I was actually going to point to you.
Yeah, so I would say probably the most difficult part was getting phase one to feel good. Um, we know it's still not perfect in terms of like keyboard and mouse controls. Not everyone is able to click so much with their index finger. We in earlier stages, or like earlier development stages of this boss, you had to click a lot more and there was less downtime. And it was one of those like shower thought moments when I realized, like, oh, when the wasps are swarming up above, they shouldn't be able to be hit, and then the player can relax, and then that's some downtime to let their finger recover from that. And then like a few things from that, and so getting that to feel right with them changing colors between being hittable and not, and also the patterns that they fly around in, I sort of had to invent those and think about those. It's definitely an open-ended problem. I wouldn't say we got it perfect by any means, but for me that was the hardest part, was just how do we make this part of it fun. The second hardest part, I would say, was just time constraints. This is one of those battles that like there are just so many details. I mean, even I was even testing things like as the room is tilting when the box form is like latching onto walls and shifting everything, like if I dive into the acid and boost into the corner and get myself wedged, what happens? And I made sure that players could never get stuck when things like that were happening. So we we may or may not continue to revise this boss going forward because there are things that like whole assets that actually got cut for time reasons. It was one of the last things I was working on to the point where there was like a tiny error when we released this that I corrected as soon as it was pointed out to me, but I did my entire test through the entire game, checked absolutely every scan, everything, and I was like, this thing is good to go for what it is right now, and then I just have to make one adjustment to the boss. And so I disabled the wasps in the first phase so I could get to the second phase really quickly, and then made some adjustments, and then I said, great, and then shipped it. Um, and it was my brother who first notified me, like, hey, I think I didn't see any wasps in the first phase. And I was just like, oh no. And so I had to go
Oh
back
no.
in, re-enable the wasps, and then delete the file off the internet and resubmit it, and just, try to do as much damage control as I possibly could at that point. But luckily we caught it very quickly. There are at most a handful of people in the world who would have still experienced that and maybe didn't see the message to re-download it. And ever since then we've had so many downloads. It's just a blip. But yeah, putting that all in perspective again, this was definitely a showpiece that took a lot of time, and there's a lot of details in it, even though it's there's still more.
And more to come, yeah, for sure. I mean, this was again, it was a great fight. It was a great showcase for for everything that I think that you guys wanted to set out to accomplish. So I can't put it over strong enough. Again, if you're listening, man, go play that, because Dak ain't wrong. This is one of the best 2D Metroid fights that I can remember playing.
No,
so
no,
just
I,
a
no,
really
no.
quick...
I want to specifically say it was the best, not one of. I said it
All
was
right,
the best.
Dak is
what I'm
saying the best.
I want to
so
make sure
there
that
you go.
you're accurately quoting me on that. So.
I wanted to talk about the music of the game, which we haven't spent a ton of time on yet. I really liked all of the sound effects as well. I like all of the rain, all of the waterfalls. I thought sounded really good. The Talon Overworld theme, I thought, really popped for me in particular. It sounded like almost like Celtic, like it's kind of a Celtic tone to it. It was really well done. Who was responsible for the music, and I guess how did that all come together?
Sure, I can talk about that one. So the music, it was a collaboration between me and Caitlin Pequino. And by collaboration, what I mean is each of us made whole tracks. So we didn't actually combine efforts on a single track. And so she is the one who made the Talon Overworld music. She plays violin, and so that's her playing violin in it.
Yeah.
And yeah, that one came together very well. It also went through many stages of development. We had back and forth discussions between all of us on the team, and her, and what we should do to go forward with it. And it really came together. But yeah, in terms of the music overall throughout the game, it's I think it's roughly 50-50 in terms of number of tracks of what we made. So like I had a list going at some point. Let me just see if I can rattle it off. So she made the title screen. That's her singing.
Right.
And also playing violin in it. And that happened back in 2017. That was from our original video. I made this very quiet Metroid Prime Hunters reference track that follows the title screen. It's a little bit of a bonus secret if you wait around long enough.
Oh my god, I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that. That's another GOAT game. Thank you.
I made the opening sequence, and the artifact temple, and all of the item jingles, and the save station, the map room, Hive Mecha, the box phase of it, is the one that I made there, and possibly a few other things. And then Caitlin made, as I said, the title screen. She made Hive Mecha the first phase. That's also her singing that. Talon Overworld, as I said. She also made the most of the Chozo ruins, like all of the Chozo ruins areas when you're just walking through the room. So not the save station or the elevator room. I think I said map station earlier. I meant elevator room.
Right.
So she made the whole Chozo Ruins area, and then also the credits. That music actually, like she did a fantastic job. All of the Chozo Ruins music came from this like 6 minute, I think, just experimental take on what a Chozo Ruins kind of sound might be like. That just goes through all of these different scenes. Just a 6 minute piece of music with all of these things in it. And we talked about it as a team, and eventually we're like, yeah, just take each section and split it into smaller chunks, and we'll just fit them into rooms. And so the credits of the game actually were intended to be Chozo Ruins music originally. We just, there aren't enough rooms in this demo almost to even
Right.
fit all of the music. We had to get a little creative with where it plays, and I think it works really well. Yeah, so that's a sense of the music. It was the two of us, and then also, do you want to talk about that one?
Sure. Before I do, though, there's also your prime numbers track that everyone loves.
Oh yes, the one of the Easter eggs in the game involves some what I was trying to make as elevator music back in 2018. I'm not sure it actually sounds like elevator music, but people seem to like it. It's that's something I made in 2018 for one of our April Fool's jokes. It's just sort of a medley of various Metroid themes.
Okay, the reason we're laughing, before I go on, have you guys 100%ed the demo?
No, I have to go back and get the rest of the map and the rest of the lore.
Okay, so let me ask it like this. Has any of you collected the Artifact of Wild?
I don't think so. No.
Okay. Well, then I can't talk about it because I'd be spoiling something amazing for you guys. But I made a
Oh.
track that's related to a secret, and it's related to the Artifact of the Wild. So I encourage you guys to go find out how to do it, like as fast as you can, so you don't get spoiled as to what it is. Because experiencing it blind is going to be hilarious.
All right, Dak. We got some
Yeah.
homework to do,
I was
buddy.
gonna say I already have a ton of reasons to go back and play this, but I have another one, and now that I can reach you guys on Discord, I'm just gonna like mess you like, oh, I did it, and gonna comment on it. But,
So I'll
yeah.
speak to the music as vaguely as I can without spoiling it. So I don't know how to make music, but we were trying to hit the deadline, and this secret is something that I came up with a long time ago, looking at an enemy that I was making, and I was like, "Hey Matt, doesn't this enemy remind you of Redacted?" And he's like, "Yeah, it does." And I was like, "Wouldn't it be hilarious if Redacted happened?" And he was like, "Oh my god, that would be amazing." And so the joke ran for a long time, and you guys will get it. You'll understand once you play. And we're grinding towards release, and I'm not prioritizing Redacted because it's a joke. But Matt is
Right.
like, "No, Redacted has to make it," and I'm like, "Okay, fine." So then I go off and I do the work I need to do to make Redacted possible, and I was like, "Here you go. Once you just got to put it in," and he did, but we needed music. So I went off and did my best to learn how to make music, and I think it turned out pretty good. I took two different familiar tracks from other Metroid games for the secret and like meshed them together, and you guys will know immediately when you hear it, and you'll know why I chose those two, which makes it, I think, more hilarious. The secret.
I need to play like literally as soon as we're done because I gotta get that. I want to know. I wanna
Yeah,
know what it is.
if you guys can do me a favor, I am collecting reactions to Redacted, and it would be amazing if you guys could film yourselves playing that section and reacting and sending it. That would be amazing.
I'm gonna stream myself doing it. 100%. Now I'm very curious as to what this is, and I'm actually glad that we haven't already tried it out because now there's a nice little mystery we have, and maybe for some of our listeners too.
I do
Yeah,
apologize
totally.
in advance if I overhyped it, but I'm pretty sure you guys will flip.
I'm ready.
um, so guys, I have a question, and like, it's kind of a bummer question, but I mean, we got to ask it just because of the history of some other projects and stuff like that. Before we even did this episode, Dak and I were kind of wondering, like should we do this episode? Because obviously, the more acclaim that this project gets, the more attention it gets, cannot necessarily always be the best thing. Given, I guess, what are your feelings just given the past tendencies of Nintendo to kind of strike down these fan made projects like that? I've always wondered how that kind of weighs on you. You guys have put in years of your life, so much extra time, with the very real potential being there of like Nintendo saying like, nope, not anymore. You got to stop this. I mean, what is, what is that? What does that feel like? I guess like working on a project like this. Are you hopeful any one way or the other, or I guess what are your thoughts about that? And I know it's kind of a bummer topic, but I feel like it's definitely one that I think that we should probably ask.
Um, I think starting with something like this, I think it helps people to understand why do it in the first place. Because I do get asked that a lot. Um, for me, and it's it's different for everybody on the team probably, but we all sort of share a collective passion. For me, uh, I got into this idea of making this game when I was 12 years old. Um, and every time a lead programmer would either get burned out and leave, or just sort of step down, get busy with real life things, and just disappear. Every time that would happen, it like really impacted me as a little kid. Um,
Right.
and like eventually I just came to this idea of like I want to do this myself. It's such a cool idea. I just want to sit down and do it. And over the years, like as I grew up, I realized, well, actually, it's for me, it's very much an educational thing. Building your own video game engine from scratch is such a huge endeavor and covers so many wide aspects of types of programming, and types of multimedia and things like that. I was just learning so much from it, and eventually realized like this is just kind of like an investment in our future. Like as a team, we would talk about this a little bit, um, like we would frame it this way a little bit as like, you know, if we're adding lighting to this game, we're adding lighting to all of our future games, because we can just
Right.
reuse that. Um, and that's sort of how I came into it. We talked a lot as a team about this issue. I mean, there's a reason that we changed our name. Our game is just called Prime 2D now. Um, there's a reason that all of our assets throughout the entire game are handmade originals. Um, like all the environments, especially, are very, not necessarily tied to this game that it draws inspiration from.
Mm-hmm.
Even like the color palette of the overworld, for example, has a lot more purples in it than the original game did. Just things don't necessarily line up. We took creative freedoms with that, um, but just sort of doing everything we possibly can so that if we're not allowed to proceed as is, um, that we would still, be in a reasonably good place. It's only a question of there are some clear resemblances in designs, to certain things, as well as some names and some of the melodies. And those would basically be the things in question. So we did everything we possibly could, but the reason why is, um, so many people out of this project over the years have gotten so many great things just in terms of creativity and development. I know that like the original founder in 2004, who was credited with, uh, like starting the whole thing from the beginning, um, he became a professional artist after this. A lot of people have become professional artists or like learned skills just by not really knowing what they're doing, hopping in to join this game, being taught by the community, being inspired, learning things, and then moving on with their lives. And I think that's really what this is actually about.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my take on it. I don't know if Guillaume has more to say.
Well, you pretty much nailed everything. It like when we were kids, it was a really cool thing, and it was also common back then to see versions of a game come out on GameCube and also on Game Boy, like maybe some movie game with the same box art, but the games were entirely different. So there wasn't effectively a 3D and a 2D version. So it wasn't like out of the realm of possibility for us to think, oh, how cool would it be if this 3D game we like to be a 2D game, because it was something that we saw very often. I know that I always thought it was cool to have the 2D game and the 3D game and see how they were different. And yeah, I definitely valued this as the time to shine, to work on my skills and to like show that I could do something good in terms of pixel art and animation. And I really tried my best. Like throughout this whole process, I've been learning a lot, and like I know I'll continue to learn. Like I'm still learning from Andreas because he's like legendary when it comes to his pixel art. His environments are just so great, and yeah, it's a shame to be in this situation just because of the mechanics of how like our society works. Uh, but it after like 3.5 years of working on this in secrecy, you just kind of get sad and lonely, and you want to share it because you're proud of what you're doing, and you're pretty sure everyone will really like it. So
Yeah, it
Right.
was
Yeah.
definitely time. It was time. At this point in time, we haven't heard anything, and we fully continue to plan on to just plan forward as is. Um, but should catastrophe strike, uh, as long as we have provided players with enjoyment or like spurred any interest into a certain other company's games, I think that's great. All is good.
yeah, the love here comes for this series. It's really because we all love Metroid, and we just want more Metroid, right? And and so we're making Metroid.
I mean, yeah, you get that. That was a great answer, guys. And thank you for sharing that. I mean, yeah, I think that you guys invested in yourself, and it really shows in this product. And it's definitely, if Nintendo comes tomorrow and says like that's enough, like I think that the product that was released can definitely stand. You know, it can stand on its own. It stands just like as such a great work. So hats off to you guys for all that you have accomplished and achieved with this Prime 2D demo. So I guess my last question for you guys, and you can be as vague or specific as you want, is what's next?
What's next entirely depends on what happens, and we haven't exactly decided because a lot of it's up in the air. But like Matt said, one thing is for sure: if we are not uh, given the big ends banhammer, uh, we want to continue working on Prime 2D. In fact, the other day we had a team meeting discussing what our next development plans were, so we haven't stopped.
That's awesome. Well, one more time, guys. This was so good. It was so fun, listeners. If you are listening to this, I'll throw the download link in the show notes here. You gotta check this out. It was so fun. It was so cool. Just seeing this, realized in because I think that at least for a Metroid fan like me who kind of grew up on Super Metroid, the question for me was always like, oh man, what would this look like in 2D? And it's so cool to see that finally realized, and you guys did a great job. Um, any last words that you guys want to part on, or let everybody know where we can check out your guys' projects, you guys on social media, anything like that?
I mean, the response so far has been absolutely overwhelming. I mean, we really didn't know what to expect when we released this. So, like I had this idea in my head of like, yeah, it might blow up a little bit, because I do sort of look at it and see all of the attention to detail, especially like I'm looking at the art side of it, usually, and I'm a little more hypercritical of the coding side and the music, that I put in and stuff. But the Caitlin's music, the team's art and everything. I had this idea of like, yeah, I think this is a really quality thing. It might blow up a little bit like within the Metroid community, and some of the people who have already been on our Discord would probably get a good kick out of it. I didn't really expect this. This is this is a lot, and it's so much positive energy and so much love and support for this what was supposed to be like a 5 or 10 minute experience, which players are just loving and putting like every timestamp I've seen is over an hour unless they're specifically trying to speed run it. Just it's really touching. So that's all I want to say is just thank you everybody.
Yeah, 100%. Like the love and support is just overwhelming, and like thanks for playing, thanks for liking everything we did, and I really hope we can keep going because Metroid is something that we really cared about. It's a special game to us, the whole series, and it's just crazy to have been able to create something that reached everybody else who feels the same.
Perfectly summed up, gentlemen. Thank you guys both for taking the time coming on the show talking about the demo. Dak and I really wanted to talk about it, and we were really excited when we found out it was possible to get the brains behind this really awesome game that we both enjoyed so much. So thank you guys for coming on the show. Is there anywhere on social media that you guys want to plug where people can come and find you for any updates on your projects?
Well, prime2d.com.
I was just saying, yeah, that's all we have right now. We really didn't anticipate this. We don't have a lot of social media platforms ready.
All right, guys, prime2d.com. Go ahead and check out this project. Thank you both, Matt and Keith, for joining us here today. This was awesome getting to chat with you guys. We are going to get out of here, but we will be back next week. Of course, you can check Dak and myself out on Twitter at Spiteri316, at DakCity_. And you can check out the Omega Metroid podcast wherever you get your podcast. Go like, subscribe, drop that 5-star review if you feel we've earned it. That's it. That's all. We will see you guys next week. Take care.